Hi and welcome to this week's Mailbox, where I'm going to go through viewer comments from the past week. And I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment today. Hopefully it shouldn't make too much difference. But I'm just realising with the time, because there's lots of other videos I wanted to get done, based on what Blizzard talked about in their Q&A, I thought there was a lot of things that's worth having a little vlog about myself, and time is an issue. So in order to try and reduce the amount of editing time I need for this, I'm going to try and do it all directly in here, so there's minimal editing afterwards. It should work out pretty much the same. I mean, actually, for all I know, I'll have loads of time to do it tomorrow. I looked outside, for example, the Beast from the East 2, the Son of the Beast, is back again. And I noticed Az from Heal vs Babyface, for example, posting a wintry landscape. Now, when I looked at my bedroom window last night when I went to bed, it looked similar. I looked at it and I thought, I can't even see the road. I can't see where my garden ends, the pavement starts, the pavement ends, the road starts. And I looked at the weather forecast. It says another 3 to 6 centimetres of snow today, as in the next day, Sunday. And I thought there's no chance of getting into work on Monday. But in actual fact, it doesn't seem to have materialised. It looks a little bit better. I think it's probably going to be okay tomorrow. But maybe it's not. Maybe I'll have loads of time. But I'm going to assume that I'm going to be at work tomorrow. So I need lots of videos to do. So before I waste any more time, let's get straight into the first one, which is Mythic Plus, Shore Fields mandatory still. When artifact traits were 52, everyone was spamming it to cap out. Weekly chest reward is Mythic raid level gear. Best way to gear up past 910 is spamming Mythic Plus. Best way to get legendaries via drop chance and token drops. Far too many carrots hanging over Mythic Plus for it to be optional. And this is what I was talking about with the islands, really. I tried out the island explorations. Or expeditions, I think they're called. I keep calling them explorations. It's sort of both. And on the BFA, on the alpha. And that's my fear with it. My fear is if it's, you know, if you need to do the Mythic Plus for gear, and then you need to do the island expeditions for Azeroth, then it's just adding another layer of things we're going to need to do, which again is another layer of things to do as a casual play, which is all fantastic, of course. It's a world away from Warlords of Draenor. But for people who already have enough to do in the game, it's extra compulsive. And that's where I particularly have a feeling. I agree with this about Mythic Plus feeling mandatory. We still need to do, like, I'm going to have to ask at the end of a raid either tonight or tomorrow, for example, because I haven't done my plus 15 this week. So I need to do one. I don't want to do my key either. Don't want to. I've got a plus 16 seat of the triumvirate. And there might be people going there, oh, that'll be fine, that'll be easy. Well, it might be if I knew what to do there. I've never done that dungeon. Not done it. Don't know what the bosses do. Don't even know the names of them, what they look like. I went once when that dungeon first came out and did it on like heroic or something just for the quest. And the group sort of disappeared halfway through anyway. I basically soloed it. And so, yeah, I've got no concept of what these bosses do. So I need to do someone else's key. Anyway. So, yeah, onto this. So, yeah, my big fear with Battle for Azeroth is if you're raiding and you're progress raiding, you're going to be spending your whatever, typically 3 or 4 nights a week doing that raiding. Then you're going to have to find other time in which to do your whatever Mythic Plus is needed. I mean, in Legion, of course, Mythic Plus was done for 3 reasons, particularly towards the start. Obviously, it was a good source of gear, as it still is, but then also for artifact power and then for legendaries. Now, the artifact power and legendaries are sort of tailed off. They've changed Mythic Plus, so that's sort of put a limit on how useful it is for artifact power. And of course, when we're at this point, we've got our legendaries. If you don't have your legendaries, then on a character that does it, it's still a really good way to get those as well. Now, no legendaries in BFA, but there is the equivalent of artifact power, that's Azeroth. Now, the relationship between Mythic Plus and Azeroth may change, of course, compared to Legion, because we have these island system as well. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I just see to myself, are we going to have, as well of our raid nights, another night where we're encouraged to do Mythic Pluses for whatever reason, and we're encouraged to do island expeditions for another reason? In which case, you know, that 3 or 4 nights a week raiding is pretty much every night. You're going to be doing stuff every night that's linked in some way to that raiding. That could see even more veteran raiders leaving the game. So that's my fear. It's only a fear. It's nothing that I'm saying this is inevitably going to happen, because we don't yet know exactly how it's all going to pan out. And it could be argued we still won't until it's very close to launch. But that is a fear of mine, certainly. On to the next one then. So there's quite a few comments on the video I did about personal loot, master loot. You know, Blizzard have dropped a bit of a bombshell here. Now, I'm going to, before I go through this comment, I am just going to précis this, just in the interests of, you know, balance here. There are some people going, oh, they didn't say that they're dropping master loot. So I'm going to address that one first of all. He didn't say the words, we are removing the option to click master loot. However, what he was saying is it's a reasonable expectation that personal loot is going to be the way to go in Battle for Azeroth. He was specifically, in his examples of the benefits of not having master loot, talking about high-end raiders. Already, high-end raiders are really the only ones that can use master loot in Legion, because, you know, you need, what, 80% of the raid to be members of the same guild in order to be able to use master loot. Otherwise, you're stuck on personal loot, which is a change I was very much in favour of, because, you know, master loot in pugs can be quite divisive. Sometimes it works brilliantly, other times it doesn't. So I was a big, you know, supporter of personal loot for pugs, LFR, that sort of thing. I mean, personal loot has been in LFR for quite a long time anyway. But, yeah, putting it into, you know, forcing it upon guilds now, it's almost like the next step. So he was saying as a way to tackle split raids. Well, the only people that do split raids are not just guild raiding groups, but serious guild raiding groups, the ones who really want to progress through Mythic. Now, there is, and we don't know the details. I mean, I was saying in the video, the problem is, you know, if it was being interviewed, a good interview would have asked follow-up questions. There is a possibility that what they mean by that is they're going to remove the master loot option for normal and heroic. That would scupper the split raids, but you can still use it in Mythic raids. That would be okay. I think a lot of Mythic raiders would actually welcome that. They'd go, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. The top guilds are still going to do that because they can even split early Mythic and stuff like that. They're not likely to, but, you know, they could. But this isn't for the very top. I was just watching a video by Asmongold, actually, where he was talking about, you know, Blizzard are doing this to try and scupper those top 10, 20 guilds who have already come up with a way to get around it. Well, there's a couple of things I would say about that. First of all, that's not what this said. There was a lot of, you know, ambiguity about what they said, admittedly. But they talked about level playing field for, you know, everyone that's doing this, which is the hundreds of other guilds. And the other thing he was saying, someone in Limit said they've already got a way around it. Well, they don't already have a way around it because they don't know how it's going to work. It's as simple as that. But it is certain that the very top guilds will still split raid in some form. They have done for years. They've done for a decade. Split raids is nothing new to the very top guilds. It's only relatively new. It came in Warlords of Draenor when it became useful to do for, you know, the rest of us. You know, the ones who are basically going to get cutting edge, but we're not going to get it quickly. But anyway, coming on to this. So there's a few questions about this. So one person saying, I rather depend on my luck than on dumb guild favoritisms. Master loot is trash. If I'm a trial and I deal more damage than your core raiders and I can't get loot, that's stupid. Better let fate decide. Now, this is the comment that can only come from one of two types of people. So first of all, it may be that you're a loot whore. Okay, obviously a loot whore doesn't necessarily want master loot unless, of course, that same loot whore is the master looter or on the loot council. Or, more likely, I think, in this case, someone who has joined guilds where it's done poorly. Now, the problem with master loot, of course, it's one of these systems. Do you know what? It's a bit like democracy, isn't it? It's brilliant when you've got a sensible government. Just like, you know, master loot is brilliant when you've got a sensible loot council. One who uses it for the betterment of the overall guild and their progress. But equally, yes, you can have people who have either favoritism, it might be just straight up favoritism and they give it to their favorites, or it might be that they are trying to give it to the people they think will do best out of it, but the loot council haven't done their research, so they, you know, they don't know enough about these, particularly the really good items, trinkets, stuff like that, and who's going to benefit most. So yeah, in a guild where they're not really very serious, but they're still using Master Loot, I can imagine there's a lot of situations where the wrong people get the really good pieces of loot, and maybe people in such a guild would think, bloody hell, if it was just personal loot, it would be better than this. So I get that, and I think that's probably what the case is here. But in the vast majority, certainly in every guild I've ever been in that's used Loot Council, which is now quite a few. The first guild I ever went to where they just did a Loot Council was in TBC even, when it was much more common to have something like DKP. And in every guild I've been in, it's been done well. The only guild I've ever been in where loot was distributed with favoritism and stuff like that in mind, ironically, was one in Vanilla, where they used DKP, but occasionally the guild leader would just circumvent the DKP and go, oh, I'm just going to give it to who I think deserves it. And very frequently that meant either using it to reward their favourites or using it as a way of punishing someone that had fallen out of favour with them. But in the ones where it's been straight up Loot Council, I've never had a bad experience of it. Because, you know, I've been in guilds where they are. I mean, some guilds more serious than others, but in every guild I've been in, then, you know, for proper raiding, progress raiding, they've been serious enough to do it properly. And it's fine. In that experience, you won't have an issue with Master Loot. But I can understand why, you know, someone in a guild where it's not run well would have a negative view of it and be in favour of this. On to the next one. So, this is onto islands again. This is all about these smart like NPCs. Because when you're on the island, there's 3 of you, but there's 3 of the opposite faction. There is a PvP mode. I think that's supposed to be a much lesser version of it. I don't think that's the main part of it. But the main part of it will be there will be NPCs. So, person saying here, PvE-wise, it won't really matter, as what I saw, the AI they described as advanced is not what I really expected, and not to the point where they said they might CC and run, but though I'm impressed that it's possible. But PvP-wise, as the classes are completely unbalanced, where some classes are completely capable and others are completely incapable, which will lead into way miserable experience, the whole expansion for some classes and retribution in this part, blah, 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 blah. I just want to note that if we are read what information we have about the beta, it's clear that the result will be unpleasant unless we see the right approach to the core of the problems. The PvP bit is a small part of it. You know, island expeditions are basically you, 2 friends, or 2 pickup groups, whatever, on an island with NPCs. That's the experience. NPCs. Some of them are just normal mobs that you're supposed to kill for the Azeroth. Some of them you are competing against. 3 of them have this smart AI, which you are competing with. That's what it is. It's not enemy players. The enemy players is like an option. It's an obvious option for them to put in for people who are interested in another PvP option. So the people who do the island expeditions against 3 opposite faction players will be one who specifically signed up to do some PvP content. It won't be me. Unless, of course, I get a couple of people in my guild who bully me into it. I'm not saying it's not of interest, and I think from a PvP side it does add some interest. But for those who watch my channel for another time, you know what I really want of PvP in this game. If I am ever going to engage in PvP in any meaningful way in World of Warcraft, what I want is a bloody big zone, basically a continent. Not something as big as Eastern Kingdom, something silly like that. But a continent nonetheless, where you've got that whole continent is just for PvP. That's it. And it's got proper objectives, fortification things that you can do as large of a part of a large raid group and get yourself involved in an army in a siege situation. Some objectives you can do if you're in a smaller group, you know, harrying enemy forces, things like that. That's PvP. This small scale stuff is just another option, which is a nice bit of interest. But it's not the way that island expeditions are intended to be working at all. They're intended to be PvE content, and that means you're up against NPCs, albeit 3 of them are a bit more cunning, potentially. Although I still think they're going to be predictable enough. Yeah, I think they are. But anyway, you know, that's it. I don't think there's any fear. If you don't think that there's anything balanced about the PvP version of this, you won't have to do it. And it's that simple. So, on to the next one. So again, yeah, this is on the personal loot thing again. Very nice comments from everyone on the chat. Well, it was very well commented on. There's loads of comments on that video, in fact. It says that something that was not mentioned by Thete is that personal loot awards more gear in average compared to master loot. Does it? Does at the moment. Does in Legion. Then you ask yourself, why does it? It does it because Blizzard wants to encourage us to use personal loot. It's, you know, whenever you're implementing something like this where you want to change your behavior, like what Blizzard definitely couldn't do is they couldn't just remove master loot. It's pretty obvious with the changes in Legion that they want to remove master loot. Okay, we knew that before they even announced this thing last Thursday. They would like to get rid of it and just change it to personal loot. So you can't just make that sea change. They tried it with flying, that didn't work. So what do? Slowly, slowly catch your monkey. You put something in to try and remove a certain number of people from using it, get them used to that idea, and then something else and something else and something else. So in Legion, what they did is they stopped you using personal loot unless you're in essentially a guild group. And because that's the stick, you know, it's like you can't use it, that's all there is to it. Then you need the carrot. You need to make it seem like a good thing. Well, you'll get more loot on average for your raid group. So therefore, they're also trying to encourage other people that have the option of master loot, in other words, guild groups. They're just saying to you, well, do you really need to use master loot? Because if you don't, your raid group is actually going to get more pieces of loot. Now, in reality, of course, we'll all know that the reason for master loot is to maximize the benefit of that gear. So in actual fact, although you get more pieces of loot, what you're actually getting is more chaos crystals, because most of those pieces of loot won't go to the people that really need them and will end up being vended or disenchanted, and that's all there is to it. But the other thing is this. So yeah, personal loot awarding more gear on average is there to encourage us to use personal loot. In Battle for Azeroth, let's say they just completely remove the option for master loot. And as I say, I'm still hoping what they really mean is for normal and heroic and not for mythic. But, you know, why didn't they just say that if that's the case? In that situation, it won't award more than master loot because there will be no master loot. It will just award whatever it awards. You know, so it won't have any meaning anymore. So the idea of it awarding more won't have any meaning. And also, if they do remove it, they don't need to put that carrot in anymore. They might just change it so it awards the same amount of loot on average as previous master loot. Who knows? Or even if they keep it the same, you know. So that's why I didn't mention it, because in the absence of master looter, there's no point in even talking about that. It's not a carrot anymore. Because there is no, you know, you're not trying to persuade someone to stop using master loot if they don't have the option for it. Well, no persuasion required. So yeah, that's why I didn't mention that one. On to the next one. It's another one that apparently I didn't mention, but I think with good reason in this case. It says, well, you have all those problems, but you forgot Transmog. If you trade a piece of loot away and no longer have a duplicate in your bags or bank, you lose that Transmog. Yeah, but that happens now. So even at the end of the tier, people will be reluctant to give away a piece of loot. Now, a couple of things to say on this one. The first of which is, so what I was talking about here is what the very, let's just say master loot disappeared. This is what will happen. The first couple of weeks, of course, you can't really trade any loot because it's bound to be your highest, or it's almost certain, not definite, but almost certain to be your highest item level piece, which means you can't trade it. There was someone actually trying to say in a comment, oh, you can trade it even if it's your highest item level piece of loot in that slot. No, you can't. That'd be ridiculous. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so they were going to, you're not going to be able to trade it, let's say in the first couple of weeks. Or after that, then you'll find an increasing number of loot which can be traded, because unless it Titan Forge or something like that, it's very likely the person does at least have an equal item level piece in their possession. It won't, you know, there'll still be time several weeks later where it won't be the case, but increasingly it'll become the case. At which point the officers will then be able to pull those items and then redistribute them as according to what they want to do. So you're saying here, so you pass it out and then you lose that transmog. But when you get given it back, you get it back again. So let's say you get it for transmog, which is usually an option. Usually when it comes to loot council, you say what you want that piece of loot for. And you'll say something like, it's a really big upgrade for me, or it's a bit of an upgrade for me, or it's a side grade, which means you might use it on some fights and not others, or you might say, you know, I only want it for off-spec, or I only want it for transmog. There's lots of different options usually. Transmog being bottom of the heap, or maybe on a par with off-spec, it all depends. And so, yeah, you'd still get it back if no one else wanted it. If someone else does want it, they should have it. But the other thing I would say to this one, if you're in a guild that's using Master Loot, presumably they're using Master Loot to maximise the strength of that raid group. In which case, Transmog doesn't come into it. You know, the fact that someone wants it for Transmog, oh, boo-hoo. Johnny needs it because it's a 10% DPS increase for them. Sod your Transmog. You know, and that's, you know, not for the last time, but certainly not the first time I'll be saying, simple as that. I mean, that's all there is to it. So, you know, the whole Master Loot debate, given that this is entirely about progress-minded raiders, because they're pretty much the only ones that can even use it anymore anyway. Yeah, the Transmog doesn't come into it, does not enter into the thinking. All right, next one. Okay, this is a good one. It says, I drop item loot altogether and give every player a currency that can be spent on loot at a vendor. I have often thought things like that in the past. Wouldn't it be much nicer if when you killed a boss, you just got a certain amount of stuff and you built up this stuff and then you just went to... It wouldn't necessarily have to be a vendor either. It could be, you know, it could be that there's different types of drops and you just get them as personal loot and then you go to an NPC who gives you a quest and you go and do the quest and you get the piece of gear. That sort of thing, you know, I'd quite like. However, we'll never get it. Now, this is what Blizzard would say to it, and then this is what I think the real reason would be. So if Blizzard would directly ask this, they would say, no, we can't do that. The reason they would give, I am 100% certain, is because that's not very interesting. You know, there's a certain anticipation, a certain excitement when a boss falls. Oh, what's it going to drop? Is it going to drop my tier legs after 2 months of killing him and R? Which actually is what it took. Or something like that. And they'll say that anticipation just goes away if you're all good. Even if you get a random amount of the things, it's still very uninteresting because it's just going in your bags. You can't equip it straight away. Remember, the ability to equip it straight away is something they always use as a reason not to have reforging, even though, of course, the Netherlight Crucible removed that possibility when it came to relics. Thank you very much for contradicting your own argument. But nonetheless, they do use that a lot. Oh, well, you wouldn't be able to equip it straight away. Not very interesting. Blah, 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 blah. That's what they would say. And that's not an invalid argument, but I don't think it's the real reason. The real reason is this. And it's the reason why Titan Forge is a thing. It's the reason why Warforged and random sockets became a thing. And it's simply this. They need you, when you've cleared a raid, to go back the next week and clear it again. And again, and again, and again. And to keep doing it until the next bit of content comes out. They need you to keep doing it. They don't want people stopping the raid after a couple of months and basically going on holiday until the next one comes out. Now, I know the majority of us are not done with it after a couple of months, but there's some people that are. And they don't want them unsubscribing. They don't want them to stop playing the game for a bit. So they create a situation where even, you know, when you've got some nice loot from it, you can still get better. It's not actually possible to get the BIS loot. That's the whole point of it. So they'd never do this. And those are the two main reasons. The second reason is the one that I think that's the real reason, the most compelling reason. The first one is the one that I'm sure they would give. But yeah, I've often thought, wouldn't it be nice if you just do that? But link to quest, not just go into. I wouldn't want to just go to a vendor and go, yeah, I'll have that one, please. That would be a bit dull, to say the least. So next one. So this is about islands again. Coming back to islands. So it says, my biggest question for your next mailbox video is, well, that's this one. Do you really believe that this is role agnostic as Blizzard claims it to be? Looks to be like tank heal DPS will be the meta. My thoughts. It's very difficult to say after just a couple of hours, but what I would say is I actually think tank heal DPS would be a poor meta for it. I think there might be an actual issue with that because what you've got to do in this is you've got to do things quickly. You've got to be able to kill things quickly. Now, you saw on the video that I did, I've done 2 videos now. One was just some highlights, which audio problems, maybe I shouldn't have even uploaded it, but I did. But the second one was a bit of a review, where what I showed was that you need to collect the stuff quickly. You know, of the 3 island expeditions my group did, One of them sort of worked at the start, as far as we could tell. The other two were bugged and were not really completable. But the first one that was, we lost to the NPCs because we weren't quick and focused enough to get through everything. If you've got a tank, a healer, and DPS, you're going to do less damage. Most of those mobs weren't a real problem. As long as we were together. The problems only ever arose, we only ever died when we split up. Because inevitably, again, there's a temptation to split up. Because if I can see a group over there that I can solo, well, I'll go over there and solo it, and other people go this way. As long as you stay roughly together, then you're generally okay. And I think that's what the enemy faction stuff's about, is to stop you doing that. And so, yeah, I'm not saying 3 DPS are definitely going to be the way to go either, but I would just see tank, heal, and DPS as very difficult to win because you'd be gathering the resources very slowly compared to the opposite faction, which is very unlikely to be tank melee, tank healer DPS, although possibly could be because it's supposed to be fairly random. So yeah, my thoughts are that there's a good chance of it being role agnostic. Now, I'm not going to say that you can just take any random 3 people and it will be as good as any other 3 people of different class role combinations. There may well be some combinations that are just straight out better than others. I hope that's not the case. I think there's a chance that that won't be the case. But if I was to guess on a combination that would be the best, I think tank, heal, DPS would be the worst. Well, actually, no, 3 healers would be the worst, I suppose. But, in terms of something realistic, I think only having 1 DPS is what I basically mean, would be the worst possible combination. Just from my very limited attempts on it so far. And of course, there's much more testing to come yet. Okay, next one. So this was about the Paladin Holy Light animation, which is mental, by the way. What's wrong with everyone? I do a video where I'm analysing something. I get 2,000 or 3,000 views. I do a video on a new animation. Don't even talk about it very much. 45,000 views so far. Mental. Anyway, yeah, so I was showing this new animation for Holy Light where the Paladin gets out a book and flicking through it. Someone actually did say, oh, shouldn't the pages go the other way around? To which I replied, I don't think it really matters because your character isn't even looking at it. You're looking over there and you're flicking through the book like that. You're not even reading it. You can have it upside down for all I care. But yeah, someone said here, says, that's awesome. Warlocks should cut themselves when casting Life Tap. Wouldn't that be, could you imagine that? Is Life Tap still going to be in? I thought I heard some. I haven't played a Warlock yet on the alpha. I thought I heard someone say that Life Tap was going away. Or maybe that was just, I don't know. But anyway, if Life Tap's in there, I don't think they'd get away with it though. You're right, it would be awesome. Wouldn't it be awesome if animations were more personal to some of the more iconic spells at any rate? And yeah, you can imagine a Warlock getting out the dagger and going, and then something happening. It would be good. I think there might be complaints, accusations of promoting self-harm and the like. So I don't think they'll be able to do that. But I agree, it'd be interesting in general, yeah, if they did some more things. Obviously you can't do it for every spell, but with some of the more iconic spells, if they did something particularly interesting, I think that would get a lot of support. Just maybe not that example. So, yes, I have to correct myself from last week. So I was talking about, was it last week? It was sometime anyway. When I was talking about Night Elves and Forsaken needing their own little areas. And I did say specifically because they're going to at least need it for when you start a character of that race. And I'd completely forgotten, this person's quite right. So I did hear that both Forsaken and Night Elf zones are going to be phased. Therein players under 110 won't experience the effects of BFA. So no new starter content. You're quite right. They had said that and I'd completely forgotten. So that yes, that is correct. When you roll a new Night Elf, even after BFA, you are going to be doing it in Teldrassil and... do I mean Teldrassil? I always get mixed up between Teldrassil and Nordrassil. The New World Tree, anyway, where Danasis is located. And, yeah, so we are going to start there, and a new Forsaken player, Undead player, is still going to start, near Undercity, like Old Lordaeron type area. Tirisfal Glades, basically. And then, yeah, at level 110, you go through. Whatever's going to happen, happens. So that's true. That is true. I still think they're going to need their own areas, though. I did actually see another comment, which I've not put on here, saying, well, the Forsaken have already demonstrated that any old sewer will do. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose you could take it, you jam them anywhere. But the Night Elves, I think, are a lot choosier. See, here's the thing. I really don't think you can just stick them in Ironforge or Stormwind. Because, one, I don't think the Night Elves would take too kindly to that. But the other thing is, I don't think the actual inhabitants would. Could you imagine the Stormwinders having to put up with the likes of Tyrande? She's a moody so-and-so at the best of times. You know, I mean, wow, no, you wouldn't want her living with you permanently. It's bad enough to be in her company for 10 minutes. Oh, dear. So, someone had a good idea that maybe one of the areas that are now unused with the portals to the Emerald Dream, where the Dragons of Nightmare used to come out in vanilla. Well, those areas are still there, but they're not really used anymore. Apart from when we had that little throwback, didn't we, where we did some old world bosses for an anniversary event. But other than that, yeah, maybe they could develop that. You know, the Glade in Duskwood might be quite a good one for the Night Elves. It's quite close to Stormwind. That's a possibility. You know, that one was a good idea, so they might do that. But yeah, I do still think they should have somewhere. Whether they get somewhere is another matter. Okay, on to the last one. This is fresh off the press. Sorry, I just did a video on because I keep being asked it. Oh, is Horde questing better than Alliance? Because apparently people have got it in their heads that Horde questing is better than Alliance. I don't agree, but I did a video on it. So anyway, someone said here, I think people should chill and live the moment. The Zandalari have over 10,000 years with story. The Kulturas has fewer years than that. Teacher mode. But also it's still alpha stroke beta. Blizzard is very good at making things balance between the factions. It's important that sometimes Horde feels special and sometimes that Alliance feels special. What do I think? Well, a couple of things that you've said there. One, I absolutely agree, and one of the points I made is that it's still beta. We haven't even experienced all of the leveling quests yet. There's a whole zone for each faction that's not there. Plus there's quests that, you know, for the other zones that keep being added in. So, you know, they haven't necessarily finished even in the zones we can test. So there's an awful lot of stuff to be done. So there is that side of it. We can't yet really directly compare. But the other thing, next one about, sometimes Horde feels special and sometimes Alliance feels special. I actually think that's quite a bad idea, and I'll give you an example why. So in Legion, for example, the Broken Shore came out, and what happened? There was an Alliance quest line with the compass, you know, from Varian Rin. You give it to Anduin, it sets off a whole little chain, and we ended up with some artifact power at the end of it, and a great cinematic. And Horde players were apoplectic, going, what the hell? Why do Alliance get something special? To which Blizzard responded, well, actually, you did have something special, but you had it earlier in the expansion. You had it right at the start. But there's the thing, that it was so far apart, so many months apart, that there was a disconnect there. The Horde didn't see that. They'd already experienced it. All they saw was that in the new piece of content, 7.2, that Alliance got a quest line, especially as it resulted in some AP as well, at a time when people are still chasing that. That didn't help smooth things out. And they didn't get it at the same time. So I actually think that it is important that when if they're going to do things special, it's no good just saying, well, it all balances out across the course of an expansion. It has to basically happen at the same time. They should have had it happen at the same time. And you can argue, and I'm not going to, you know, say there's anything wrong with this argument. You could argue that, well, people should just, you know, wind their heads in and deal with it. You know, because it is true, Horde had something special with a special cinematic at the start of Legion that Alliance didn't have the equivalent of, and then later on Alliance had one of their own. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't. To anyone sensible, it doesn't matter. But just because it matters to a lot of people, no one's saying the majority of players are sensible. So because it does matter to a lot of people, I think they should have a more conscious thought about making sure that it's not just equal, but it's seen to be equal as well, is what I would say. But as to the first point, yeah, I absolutely think, first of all, even just what I have tested, I don't see any big disparity. There are differences though. And depending on what you enjoy most out of questing, you may favour one over the other. But yeah, there's so much that we still haven't got to test yet. And even the stuff we have got to test, some of it may be chopped and some other stuff may be added in. That's quite common as well. We're still, I don't want to say early in testing, but we're you know, we're not quite even halfway through testing yet. So, you know, there's still a bit to go before it all goes live. And there you go. So that's the last one for today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with other people who might also be interested. I've still got several more videos to work on based on what Blizzard said on Thursday. Hopefully they'll be able to come out over the next week. I'll try and keep them bite-sized and focused on individual topics rather than doing one grand one, which I've sometimes done in the past. But thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.